This is Making It Here and There. Welcome to the show.
DJ Shilpa is more than just the woman behind the turntables. She has found the sweet spot of intersecting her cultural heritage with a successful DJ and MCing career, entertaining audiences at parties, clubs, and virtual discos. In a very competitive industry, Shilpa has managed to hustle, network, and secure opportunities to showcase her talents. Her ability to craft and communicate what our clients crave is effortless. While physically based in the greater New York City area, her reach is global. You can listen to DJ Shilpa's work on our website, djshilpa.com.
Thank you, DJ Shilpa, for coming on Making It Here and There. I appreciate you coming on during your busy schedule.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you start telling everybody about how you got started in the DJ and music industry?
Music is something that's just always been a part of my life. I've always liked music. Growing up, I played the flute in school, so I know how to read and write music. By the time I graduated high school, I was the drum major in band. Throughout college, I was always into music. So music has just always been a part of my life. In the early 90s, my dad started a mobile DJ company. And he started this mobile DJ company in the central New Jersey area because he felt there was a need to provide a service for South Asians. There weren't any South Asian DJs in the early 90s. But there was starting to become a large population of South Asians within that central Jersey area. So you had Indians getting married, having engagement parties, things of that nature. And they were hiring non-Indian DJs, but then giving the non-Indian DJs Indian music to play. So my dad was like, I love music and I'm very intrigued by it, which he was too. Like my whole family is very musical. They're very much into music in general. And I think he just thought it was like, a great way to make some side pocket money. Which I think any family-oriented person is going to think, like my parents both had blue-collar jobs. So it's like, it was his way of like, this is something I could do on the weekends and maybe earn some extra money to help my family. And he just went out and I think at the time, I'm not so sure if people are going to remember, but there was a store called Sam Ash and they sold musical equipment. In the New Jersey and New York area. I want to say Sam Ash doesn't exist anymore. I'm pretty sure they went bankrupt in recent years and closed. But at the time, it was a pretty big store. They sold instruments, musical equipment, DJ equipment. So he just went out and bought 2 turntables, a mixer, some speakers, and started literally just DJing for his community. So that's how I got started. I was his daughter, so I would go to these events with him as a little girl. And, initially it was just he needed a helper. He needed somebody to help him carry the turntables in and help set up, or maybe, just answer questions people might have. Or if he was spinning and somebody had a request, I'd take the request. I was literally his helper. And I just didn't think it was going to make such an impact on me at the time, right? You're a kid, you're not thinking how you're really absorbing all of it. But when I look back to those times, I'm like, man, I didn't really think it was going to affect me to the point where one day I was going to make the decision to do it myself. But that's how I got started, because my dad was a DJ.
What would you say specifically drew you to the craft of DJing?
I enjoyed the music, obviously. I enjoyed when specifically you would mix one song into the other, right? Executing a blend or a mix. That part of it really intrigued me. Most of all, though, I really enjoyed the people, the energy. I would go to these events with my dad, and you just watch people have a good time. You watch people come together, and you watch music just take it all away. And I think that's what really drew me to it. That aspect of it, the gratitude people expressed at the end of an event, right? That human aspect of it really drew me to that craft.
And something you said before, your father was sort of found a business venture and filled in a niche that maybe wasn't there at the time. I don't know how many Indian specialty DJs exist right now, but what gives you like a unique perspective and a performance with like the Indian community?
Being of Indian descent, obviously I know and understand Indian music. Mm-hmm. So it gives you the upper hand when someone that's Indian contacts you to do their event. You understand American music because I'm American, right. And I grew up in America and I speak English and I understand English music. I understand all that, but being Indian, I also understand Indian music. So being able to blend the two genres, kind of gives me the upper hand within that niche, within that community.
And there's different, like at a wedding, like an Indian wedding, there's different ceremonies or symbolic acts, not say acts, but something that's done that, you wouldn't find in a traditional quote unquote Western wedding. And that's something that you can speak to and do sort of effortlessly.
Right, because I know it. It's my culture. I grew up being around it. So it's, you get hired to do an Indian wedding. If you get hired to do an all-day Indian wedding, you already know it's going to start in the morning with a groom's procession, which is called a barat. And it's so funny, like when now doing these events in America, like when you do an Indian wedding, there's bound to be like non-Indian people at the wedding. And it's so amazing to see like their world open up because they've never attended a barat. They're like, what? Like you got to dance in the morning before the ceremony even starts. And they love it, it's because it's something they've never seen, and that's one aspect of like Indian weddings that, as you're saying, it doesn't happen in other weddings. The groom's procession, and then you go into the ceremony in the morning, then there's this break, and then you go into like, the evening part of it, the reception, because the ceremony itself is also not like 15-20 minutes. It's a whole like hour and a half. There's all these rituals, and all the rituals are highlighted with ceremonial music that goes with it. So, yeah.
When I think of Indian, quote unquote, Indian culture, it's interesting because to me, India has different regions and there's different, you don't call them counties, but different areas of India that do different things. Do you do anything specific, like a specific area of India or to a specific group of Indians from a particular area? Or is it like kind of all the same? I mean, that's something I'm just curious about.
It definitely is not all the same. You've got your North Indians. They have different traditions than the South Indians. Mm-hmm. For instance, South Indians speak like Tamil and Telugu, which is a type of, it's a language, whereas North Indians speak Punjabi or Hindi. You've got your central, like the people from central part of India. The cultures are definitely different, but for the most part, it's very similar. Like the overall thing is the same, but like there'll be little like aspects. For instance, I'll give you a really good example. If you're Gujarati, which is a type of Indian, during the ceremony, you go around the fire only 4 times. Whereas if you're Punjabi, and you're from North India, in the ceremony, you go around the fire 7 times. So it's those little like cultural details that are different. But for the most part, in every Hindu ceremony or Indian ceremony, you're walking around the fire. But depending on what part of India you're from, it might be 4 times or 7 times.
I've never been to an Indian wedding, so I'm going to have to get invited to one so I can say the walk around the fire and the groom's procession.
There's different parts to it. There's the it usually starts off with a small prayer, then the bride's procession, and then you've got the walk around the fire, the tying of an actual knot, like between the groom and the bride. Like you take there's these what do you call it?
Or...
Yeah, and you tie them together. It's an actual symbolic like ritual. Then the walking around the fire. Then there's this thing called Saptapadi, which is like 7 steps, which is considered to be like 7 vows. Whole bunch of stuff.
So kind of like to change a little bit. We were just talking about this prior to our doing the podcast, but we were talking about famous DJs. And when we think of famous DJs, a lot of them are usually just white guys, whether they're, the Calvin Harris or like a lot of European DJs. Do you feel that you're kind of, have to work harder to be represented in the DJ community?
I think that overall, right, like when you speak of the DJ industry, it's a male dominant industry. Mm-hmm. Or it was. I'm definitely seeing more and more females now, which is amazing. I've definitely met and worked with a lot more female DJs now within the last couple of years than I did 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think, to answer that question fairly, yeah, because it's such a male-dominant industry, I think the women do have to work a little bit harder to be represented. But I tell people all the time, and I'm a very firm believer in this, it's not about being a male or a female DJ, it's just about being a good DJ. That's what I believe. That's what I would like the whole industry to believe. That's why I represent myself the way I do, the way I talk about the industry on my social media platforms. That's what I want. I want there to be an equal representation of both males and females. If you're good, you're good, but yeah, there's just not a lot of female DJs out there. And you're absolutely right. Like the representation there needs to level up a little bit more.
And knowing that, even, I would just say 15 years ago, when did you say you would start? About 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
So knowing that 15, 20 years ago, you still said, all right, I'm going to establish my brand. How did that process start?
Because, I feel like when you understand the basics of music and the basics of DJing, and you gotta believe in yourself, right? I mean, for me, it was just, I knew I was good at it. Mm-hmm. So I was ready to face any criticism that might come my way, or, anything that came my way. I was ready to face it and fight it, but I always faced it and fought it with my skill. Mm-hmm. And that's something I tell everybody, like, as long as you're good at what you do and you keep practicing your skill and, you keep putting yourself out there, you're going to be able to represent yourself fine. And 15 years ago, social media didn't exist. So it was definitely a lot harder. But I think now with social media being present, things have gotten a little easier. It's a lot easier for you to take a quick 30 second or 1 minute clip and put yourself out there on social media. I mean, you've got lots of DJs blowing up on TikTok right now because they do these cool mixes or this quick, here's 10 songs from 2019 that were very popular, and they throw it on TikTok and they blow up. So it's like, there's that aspect of it too now that makes, I think, the representation a little bit more easier.
Yeah. And so we're actually talking about TikTok. How, you said Instagram, TikTok, you've been using social media as you're, helping you with your brand and getting your name out there. What do you do specifically on these accounts that, to help build your brand and get that free advertising?
Show people my skill, my ability, quick mixes, quick blends. It allows people to see, what exactly a DJ does, blending one song into the other, maybe doing a quick scratch, a quick trick on the turntable. And I think people find it intriguing. So to be able to use social media in that aspect, I think it's great.
And it's funny. I think what was it last week when we had the snowstorm? You're like, I have. She's like, you're like, it's a blizzard, but I got to do the car test.
Yeah.
And what is the
Yeah.
car test?
So, believe it or not, and this is very true, a lot of producers will finish producing or making their music on their laptop or their, desktops, and they'll take their laptop, and if you have the ability to do this, you should definitely test the levels of a mix in a car. It's just something about it. Like it opens up a different, sorry about that.
It's okay.
House phone.
The phones are blowing up.
Right. It opens up this different, like ear, and you're able
like an echo chamber or something like that. Or?
Yeah, I don't know. And you're able to just like really like level out your mix. And yeah, that's just something that I think I've been doing since I started producing and putting my mixes out there. So every chance I get, before I throw anything out there, I test it in the car. I'm like, oh, it sounds great. All right, cool. Or if I need to fix something, I fix it before I put it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I learned with just social media and building up your audience or getting your whatever you're doing, whether it's a product or a brand or whatever, is showing that process. And I think that's really important. Like, you do videos where you're sitting in the studio, you're like, I'm doing this. And then you're like doing the music and you're like, all right, that sounds good. And
yeah.
Or like, oh, this is bringing me back or whatever. But you're constantly bringing everyone on that journey.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, I'll just finish. Because that's what you see, I feel like, with the music industry, or at least what it was up till probably maybe as of recently, just a finished product. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what goes into the pot. Everybody just sees, the soup. But
yeah, the end product. And again, I think, social media has allowed, for us to do that. Even, on Instagram, when Instagram first started, we would just do the end product, just post the picture, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm at the event, or I'm at this show, or check out my new mix, right? Then stories came about, and the stories I find I get more engagement on my IG stories, because people are just intrigued with, like you said, they want to see how the process of it all. They want to see the behind the scenes. So.
Yeah. And I think that's, what intrigued me about, what going on your Instagram was like seeing the journey. And I was like, all right, I got to talk to her. Yeah. So I'm just trying to think. I wanted to really talk about, so we talked about the weddings, but, you also do clubs.
Right.
Obviously not right now, but, you did them and you do plan on going back to the club scene. Can you talk just briefly about getting like residencies and securing contracts? What do you say to these clubs or these promoters, like how you stand out?
A lot of the club residencies that I got was by networking. Mm-hmm. Actually, like I live 10 minutes away from the city, from New York City. So actually going in to these spots, networking with the managers, networking with a lot of the owners, letting them know that I'm a DJ. Initially, when I first started the club scene, I always had a flash drive on me, and I would be like, hey, like, here's a flash drive with some of my mixes. Like, if you like it, give me a call. If you don't worry about it. No harsh feelings. And a lot of times I would just get called back, or people would be like, oh, this is exactly like the vibe I'm looking for. Or, love your mixing style, but would you be able to mix top 40 tonight? Or would you be able to do a little bit of rock too? Or would you be able to do this, that, and the other? So securing, those actual first time gigs was going out, networking, giving them a sample of my work, right? Being called back. Then once I got in the spot, it was just, I tell people all the time, like, it's about being professional, showing up on time, right? Treating it like a job, whereas some DJs don't do that, right? If I'm being asked to show up to a Tao Group property at 6 p.m., because my set starts at 6 p.m., I'm not going to roll up at 5:59. I'm going to roll up at 5:30, put my laptop down, connected to the equipment, make sure it's all working, because there have been times where I've had to troubleshoot, or maybe somebody from the night before messed something up or moved a wire or whatever. So I think there's a little bit of that too. And I think once club owners and managers realize you are really about the music and you're about being professional and you're not just, you know, some little kid that's just trying to get attention and get drunk and free drinks or whatever, you know, they take that into consideration, and then you end up securing a residency, which is, you know, could be a weekly, monthly, whatever. Pre-COVID, I had 2 residencies, a weekly residency at Bodega Negra, which is a Tao Group property in New York City, and then a monthly residency at Magic Hour, which is also a Tao Group property. It's a New York City rooftop bar.
Oh, wow. And as a club DJ, how do you communicate with your audience? Do you feel like there's a vibe when you get there, or do you just go based off what, like you said, what the owner or the manager tells you ahead of time, or a little bit of both?
Sometimes, you know, it all depends on the space that you're DJing at, and it depends on the vibe that they might be trying to create. There's some rooms that I've done that want a more open format vibe. Open format is a little bit of everything. So they want top 40, they want a little bit of hip hop, they want some Latin, they want some, you know, world music. And New York City, let's face it, it's a big melting, you know, pot. So it's like, you know, open format DJing, in my opinion, works really well there. But I have DJed in spots in New York City and specific rooms that only want a specific vibe. There was this room I used to do called the Ricky, very small hotel lobby at the Dream Hotel. And there was a Thursday night vibe that I used to do, and it was just all rock. So it would be like 3 or 4 hours of just rock music. And I had to do a lot of research, you know, to get that rock music, to learn how to mix it and mix it flawlessly. And then, not to mention, continuously sort of like mixing it up so I didn't sound so redundant on a weekly basis. But yeah, you know, I mean, that's one aspect of how the club owners, you know, would choose you to do a residency.
But when it comes to like, once like you're up there and you're DJing, do you get like a vibe from the audience? Do you do anything to pump the audience up? Or, I mean, I know it depends, right? Like if you're in a lounge, you're not trying to rage at a lounge, you're trying to like relax at the lounge.
Exactly.
Say you're at, you know, more of like a dance club.
Right. So, and yeah, I think it's like, I think that it sort of slipped my mind towards the end of like when I was like, you know, answering the last question. But yeah, depending depending on where you're spinning, right. If you're doing like a club, you know, club spot, like there's this big room in New York called Slate. And it's just this big, massive room. And it's just like, opens up at like 11:30 at night. And it's just this big freaking room where everyone just dances from like 11:30 to like 4 o'clock in the morning. In spaces like that, it's, in my opinion, it's a little easier to read the room, because if you're playing hip hop and the crowd just goes wild, you know to not switch it up right away. There's a reaction you've now just gotten, right? Like you dropped a song, the crowd went nuts, they screamed, you know, they sang along. That's your cue. This crowd likes this. So I'm going to continue for another 5 to 10 minutes before I try to switch up the vibe. And then like those type of clubs to me are very easy, because if you do switch up the vibe and they don't respond to it, they're going to make it very well known. Like they're either going to stop dancing, or you'll see people will start leaving the room to go downstairs. You'll start noticing like, you know, maybe not a lot of people left on the floor. Maybe people are going to the bar, you know. So engaging with the crowd, there's many ways. Body language, you know, that's huge. And then, like I said, if they start singing to the music, you know, if they're really vibing with the type of music that you're playing, they're going to give you a reaction. You're going to be able to tell. So that's one way you sort of read the room and engage with your audience. And then obviously some clubs allow for you to have a mic. So you can literally get on the mic and hype up people.
Yeah. Are you a good hype woman?
I am. I really, I like the way I hype up people. It's more on a classy side. It's not
Right.
like a let's get ready to rumble kind of style.
Oh
Like
God, no.
it's more like,
You're not brash or anything like that.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like, you know, when you do that though, do you feel like it's very authentic though? Because I feel like if I tried to hype anybody up, I would be like, oh, I'm a joke. Like, you know what I mean? Do you feel like it's inside
Well,
you to
I
hype
think it's
everyone up?
pretty. And that's why I think like the way I do it, it's pretty authentic. Like I don't force myself to. I do it when I'm feeling it, and I
Oh,
do it
okay.
like where I feel like, I'll get, even at weddings, like aside from like the entrances that I have to announce and other narrative things like the first dance and cake
Right.
cutting and blah blah, like all that stuff. Aside from that, during the dance floor, I do the bare minimum, like just get your hands up or make some noise for the bride and groom, obviously with more energy because the music's louder. But yeah, I do what I feel because then it's authentic, and it comes off that way too. Whereas you can tell when it's being forced.
Right, right, right. And I assume the audience knows too when it's a little,
Yeah,
or
a
even if
little too
it's
much.
cheesy, or just or sometimes they can just come off as very flat. So you definitely don't want that either. But and how do you say you just connect with new clients in general, like with weddings? Is it also just
I think
networking and referrals,
with
or
with weddings, it's a lot of referrals and word of mouth. Especially with South Asian weddings, I mean, now I don't know in the new world what's going to happen. But pre-COVID, an Indian wedding could have like 400 or 500 people.
oh wow,
So, if there's 400 people at the wedding and you're killing it and the dance floor is packed and everyone's having a good time, you are bound to give a card out that night, if not 10, maybe 20. So initially when I started the business, that's what it was. Like I was doing wedding after wedding, like, and at the end of the wedding, people were coming up to me like, hey, can I have your business card? Because my son's getting married next year. Or, hey, can I have your business card? I just proposed and like, this was such an amazing night. And this is exactly what I want at my wedding. So securing new clients for weddings for me is more word of mouth, with a little bit of advertisement in wedding, magazines or online magazines like The Knot. There's an Indian website called Maharani Weddings, and I do an ad on there. But I definitely don't spend a lot of money on actual advertising. And then securing new residencies or club contracts is more just putting myself out there, putting my work out there, and putting myself out there on social media. And
right,
that social media aspect just helps all around. I think the more you put yourself out there, the more people know about you. People are bound to talk like, oh, there's this. Believe it or not, I get a lot of inquiries in my DMs, which I don't prefer, but it's been happening a lot.
well, I mean, all anything that generates any type of discussion that could lead to a business or can lead to something
Yeah.
is always positive. And yeah, the DM thing, I totally get it. It can be kind of frustrating, but because you, like you said, you want to funnel that towards, I guess, an email or
Yeah. I mean, even on I think sometimes I just get frustrated because all my profiles, like the profile pages themselves say, like for booking inquiries, email here. It's
Mhm.
very large and it's there, but people still prefer to like DM you. And what's annoying is sometimes like, social media is great, but it's like, I'm not always on my phone checking my DMs. So it's
Right.
like I might not get to that inquiry right away. And then a lot of people don't understand, but if you're not following the person and the person's got a lot of followers, which I do, your DM might not come in my regular folder. It goes
Right.
into like a requested folder.
Right. Yeah.
So then,
Yeah. They filter it.
so I sometimes miss it, and then like before you know it, it's like a week later and I'm like, oh my God, I just saw this, you know?
Yeah, and that's yeah, and I feel like too with just like anything, it's like a lot of your information could probably be found on your website, and people are like, "Oh, what's this?"
Exactly.
Or whatever. Like it's on my website, but you try. We all try. Um, so I did want to talk about, and you did mention it. We kind of talked about the pandemic and how that has changed you know, the industry that truly the industry that you're in, you know, and you've been doing virtual shows. Other than that, I mean, what, you know, what's been different? You know, how do you plan on pivoting? What do you expect? I know you can't, it's hard to obviously
Yeah.
predict the future, but what do you plan on going forward?
It's been tough, right? Because, you know, I went from doing like 40 to 45 weddings a year to like a complete halt in March of 2020. I think I executed my last wedding of the lockdown on March 15th and
Oh, wow.
16th. Yeah. And on the 16th, New Jersey went into lockdown. Um, it's hard. I have to be completely honest with you. I didn't think it was gonna be this like year-long thing. I just thought initially like, all right, we're gonna sort of figure this out and maybe by this summer we'll be back to normal. And then before you knew it, we were in the summer, and then before you knew it, we were in the fall. Before you knew it, it was Christmas. I was lucky enough that a lot of my clients were able to reschedule their events for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So within that time frame, I decided, all right, like I don't have any in real life gigs, but what I can do is stay focused on practicing my craft. You also don't want to get away from it so much where like you go back to do a real wedding and you're like, what am I doing? You
Yeah,
know,
right.
like you know, not that you ever forget, because it's like riding a bicycle. So it's like, it's not that I would ever forget how to mix. It's just, you get rusty, you know, practice makes perfect. So it's like, I just decided to continue to practice on a daily basis. I figured out platforms that were available and were allowing DJs to go live. IG was allowing DJs to go live, but there's a lot of music infringement, copyright issues with IG. So I would go live for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and then I would get cut off. So
Oh,
that's how I found Twitch.
okay.
And Twitch allows you to just like go live for hours, like however long you want. I think the longest set that I've done is a 12-hour set on Twitch. I did it on
Oh my
Halloween.
God.
I started at 12 p.m. noon and I ended at midnight. It was a 12-hour set and I did it to raise money for On the House community in New York. They were helping to raise money to help feed underserved communities in New York. They were going to do 10,000 meals during the holiday time. So we were able to raise like a grand, you know, for that. And that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think that's all I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to be creative virtually. I'm doing virtual Zoom birthdays, small events where people feel like, you know, a DJ could highlight, you know, what's happening. I just recently did a Sweet 16 on Zoom where like it was only 2 hours, but you know, they hired me to just do the music, and everybody that was logged on into Zoom, you know, was able to hear the music and party. So that was kind of fun. That's all I'm doing. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that this is more of a transitional year and then that we are back to events. Because yeah, if we don't go back to events by 2022, I'm going to have to start thinking of other, you know, ways of making
Right.
money.
But I mean, so let's all be hopeful. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, you know, obviously things are moving into a better direction.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, and people were still having weddings last year. I mean, regardless of how you felt,
Yes.
I mean, people were still having weddings and
I did do a few COVID weddings,
okay.
you know, where people did follow the rules, which is like, you know, I think in New Jersey at some point by the summer or fall, it was, if you were gonna, in the summer, you could do an outdoor event. It just had to be a specific amount of people. Everybody had to keep their masks on, you know, unless they were eating, you know. So like I did do a couple COVID weddings. They went well. You know, nothing happened, not that I know of. You know, I keep my mask on at events. Right now, I have a wedding scheduled in April, and then starting May, my schedule is pretty regular. I mean, so I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that those weddings don't move.
Right. Well, and again, too, with I know New York City just opened out indoor dining. So, I mean, I feel like, again, things are moving into a good direction.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. And like you said, 45 weddings in a year is you only have to, that's a lot of weddings.
It
You do
is.
like almost a wedding a week. That's
Yeah, it is. It is. And to go from that to like absolutely nothing, it makes you question everything, right? And yeah, listen, it's February, what's today's date? The 9th.
yeah.
So we're coming on almost a year of this.
Yeah, it's so with that said though, do you have, in addition to like the weddings that you have coming up and hopefully the residencies start up again soon, do you have any other plans or anything that you're working on that you want to
The
share?
game plan is that hopefully the events come back and then, and the residencies start back up in New York City now that the indoor dining is opening up. I do have a feeling that, clubs and stuff may be the last thing that comes back because I just think clubs would be superseders, like I just don't see the clubs coming back right away. So aside from like keeping my fingers crossed and hoping all that stuff happens, the other things that I'm working on is I had started this show on Twitch called Sippin' and Spinnin' with DJ Shilpa, which got pitched to a radio station. It's called Dash Radio, and they have a subdivision. Dash Radio it's pretty, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a pretty good radio station and internet online thing. And they have a subdivision called Ruckus Avenue Radio, which features like South Asian artists. And that show was pitched to them. So hopefully that goes through and then that'll be a weekly thing.
Oh, that's cool.
So that'll be really cool. That's one project I have lined up. But yeah, other than that, just to stay focused and continue to put my mixes out for my subscribers. I have a list of subscribers that, have subscribed to me where every month they get a 30-minute mix from me, on the first of the month. And every month it could be different. Like February 1st, they got a 30-minute mix, which was more like slow jams because it's Valentine's, March 1st, I'm planning on putting out a more like upbeat mix because, it's springtime. People are going to want to work out, things like that. One month I might feature reggae, so on and so forth. So I just keep myself busy like that. Those are the projects that I work on.
So you can just tell everybody how to find you and you can tell them how to sign up for this newsletter.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Instagram at DJ Shilpa. So that's DJ SHILPA. And all you have to do is simply just shoot me a DM with your email and I'll sign you up. And starting the first of every month, you get a free mix.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on and fingers crossed, everything does go back to a new normal and, you can get back out there spinning the tunes because it sounds like you have a really amazing career.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in. If you are interested in being interviewed for Making It Here and There, please send an email to MIHATpodcast@gmail.com. Making It Here and There is an interview series focusing on ways in which individuals are using communication across borders and across cultures to achieve understanding, learning, and overall consciousness of the world around us.